This is the Xiaomi Mi 11 Ultra, and it's a phone that has now been out for 4 months, would you believe? Now, the device that I was using just prior to this one was the regular Mi 11, and so it was an interesting experience switching to what is essentially the exact same device, but with some additional bells and whistles. But then when you see that there is actually a $400 price difference between these two phones, depending on where you live, it makes you think, well, gee, the Ultra version better have some damn good additional features. And so that's what I aim to unpack in this review. I want to compare the differences between these two phones and assess whether this more premium one is worth the extra cash, and also determine how it stacks up compared to all of the other premium $1,000 plus flagships on the market. So without further ado, let's dive in. Okay, let's start with how these two devices are the same. Firstly, the displays. Like the regular Mi 11, the Mi 11 Ultra also has a Quad HD 120Hz AMOLED display, and honestly looks and feels identical to the Mi 11, which isn't a bad thing. That phone's display was great, so is this one. As well as that, the software is also an exact replica, it seems, of what we have on the regular Mi 11. Same limited system launcher that requires a bit of tinkering to get set up in a way that looks nice, same iOS style gestures, and the same incredibly smooth and buttery animations. Both phones come shipped with Android 11 and the same set of pre-installed system apps. Honestly, the phones are identical when it comes to software. Thankfully, but not surprisingly, the amazing haptics from the Mi 11 are still present with this phone, which is fantastic. But sadly, the subpar fingerprint sensor is also present. And in fact, I actually think it might be slightly slower on the Mi 11 Ultra. That could just be my imagination. Aside from that, both phones have IP68 water and dust resistant ratings. Both have fast wired and wireless charging, although at slightly different rates. And both phones also have the Snapdragon 888 on board as well. So lots of similarities. And even though that's where the similarities kind of stop, I do want to make it very clear that all of these components that are similar, well, they're very big components of what make up a phone. So the fact that they are all essentially the exact same between these two phones is testament to the great value offered by the regular Mi 11. But there are a number of differences too, starting with the battery. Whilst the regular Mi 11 has a 4600 mAh cell inside, the Ultra has a 5000 mAh cell, and whilst that might not sound like that big a difference on paper, to be honest, I've not had any troubles getting this phone to last a full day. In fact, most days it's on about 30 to 40% when I'm hopping into bed, whereas this was one of the bigger complaints I had about the regular Mi 11. And then we have the design. Now, from the front, both of these phones are identical. In fact, I used the Mi 11 Ultra in the MIUI home screen setup video, even though I was kind of hinting at it being the regular Mi 11. But whilst the front of these phones are identical and they actually share the same footprint as well, the backs of these phones not only look, but feel very different as well. For one, on the Mi 11 Ultra, the back glass is glossy and not frosted, and this is absolutely baffling to me. I've made it very clear in almost all of my phone reviews over the past year or two that I much prefer a frosted glass finish on the back of a phone compared to a glossy one. And for me, I feel as though that's the much more premium feeling finish as well. So I'm not sure why they decided to go with glossy on the more premium phone, but it is what it is. And then secondly, we of course have the beefy camera unit on the Mi 11 Ultra compared to the fairly minimal and subdued camera module on the regular Mi 11. Now we'll get to the actual camera performance in a moment, but this module on the Mi 11 Ultra is bonkers. It's super thick and pronounced. Visually, I don't like the look of it at all. And whilst you do get this mini display on the right side of this module, which shows the time or even a preview of what the camera is looking at, I've largely found this to be quite gimmicky and not something that I use regularly. That said, you do get the benefit of there being no side-to-side wobble when this phone is flat on a table, so there's that. But from a design standpoint, I actually much prefer the look and feel of the regular Mi 11. But then, speaking of the cameras, the reason for this ridiculous camera hump on the back is that all of the cameras are actually different to the ones found on the cheaper phone. Instead of a 108 megapixel main shooter, the Ultra has a 50 megapixel shooter, but don't let the megapixel count put you off. Both phones capture fantastic photos with the main sensor. But then with the ultra wide, the Mi 11 Ultra has a far superior 48 megapixel ultra wide lens in comparison to the 13 megapixel ultra wide on the regular Mi 11. And I've definitely noticed a difference between those two lenses. Ultra-wide images do look sharper than what they do from the ultra-wide on the regular Mi 11, particularly in less optimal lighting conditions. But then an even bigger difference between the cameras on these phones is that the Ultra has an additional 48 megapixel 5x optical zoom periscope lens for telephoto shots, whereas the regular Mi 11 has nothing. And so obviously you're gonna see a big difference between the zoomed in shots on these two phones, night and day really. And so for me, this category right here, the cameras, this is the main reason why you might want to go for the more premium flagship over its cheaper brother. But the real question is a superior ultra-wide camera and a telephoto lens worth $400 to you? For me, I mean, yes, of course I'd prefer to have the better camera system if I had the choice. But if it was my money, no, I would actually probably stick with the regular Mi 11 and be really happy with the money that I've saved. But okay, let's say having the superior camera setup is essential for you, no two ways about it. Well then, might I encourage you to instead look into the Galaxy S21 Ultra. Its camera configuration is even better than what you get with the Mi 11 Ultra, and spec for spec, everything else is almost identical between the two phones. The only difference is that it's actually cheaper. So even though the Mi 11 Ultra is a fantastic phone, it's kind of priced out of the market right now. The only real reason I can see why you'd get this over the Galaxy S21 Ultra is the software, because to be fair, despite some quirky limitations, I actually kind of prefer the MIUI software skin compared to One UI. But aside from that, unless this phone sees some pretty drastic price reductions over the next little while, it's actually kind of a tough sell, which is a shame because otherwise it's a really great phone. Let me know your thoughts on this device down in the comment section below. Also, a big shout out to Panmi, who were kind enough to send the Mi 11 Ultra and the regular Mi 11 my way so that I could check both of them out for these videos. Aside from that, hopefully you enjoyed the video. Thank you all very much for watching, and I will catch you later.